This is Innovledia.
Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create different types of shaders or materials and assign them to objects in Maya. Alright? The appearance of a surface is defined by how it is shaded. In Maya, we use materials or shaders to define the substance that an object is made of. A shader defines how light is absorbed, transmitted, or reflected from a surface. Without a shader, an object will not be visible, because we can only see an object when light rays will bounce back from the surface of the object to our eyes. In Maya, all objects come with a default shader known as Lambert, which accounts for the visibility of objects as we create them. When we render our scene for the first time without adding any shader, it is the Lambert shader that allows the objects to be visible in the final output. If an object has no shader assigned to it, it will appear in green color within the viewport and will not be visible in the rendered output. Alright? Now, as we are focused mainly with the Arnold Renderer in this course, so we are going to take a look at the Arnold Standard Surface Shader that comes with Arnold Renderer, which is highly flexible and can be used to simulate most of the materials that we see in our daily life. So, to create your very first shader or material, you have to open a new window known as the Hypershade. You can open it either by going to the Windows menu, then Rendering Editors, and clicking on Hypershade option. Or you can also open the same thing by clicking on this little icon on the status line. Now here we have many panels, each for a different task, such as this section here is the place where we can find all the shaders that we have created in our scene. Not just shaders, but also we can find all the textures, lights, cameras, and other assets that we have used in our scene. Below that, we have a section where we can select different types of shaders and nodes that we would like to create for our objects. Beside that, we have another section where we can build complex shading networks to add more detail to the shaders and create more realistic materials. Here on the top, we have this Material Viewer section, where we can take a look at the preview of how the shader is going to appear in presence of light. We can tumble here and dolly in and out just like we can do it within the viewport. And below that, we have the Property Editor, using which we can modify the properties of the shader that we have created. Alright? Now, as we are going to work with Arnold shaders, so you have to go to this Create panel and toggle this Arnold option, below which you will find this shader option, which you can toggle as well. And below that, you will find this Surface option, on which you have to click to get this list of surface shaders. And here, you have to click on the AI Standard Surface Shader. This is like an universal shader, using which we can simulate most of the materials that we see in the real world. Now, as you click on it, the shader will be created and it will appear as a node within this section. You can rename the shader like any other object in Maya. So, the first property that we can set for a material is its base color, or the color of the surface. You can change it to anything you wish. This is also known as the diffuse color. And here, you don't need to change this weight value unless necessary, because this determines how much light is reflected back from a surface and how much is absorbed. In Arnold shaders, everything is set to physically accurate values by default. So, a value of 0.8 means the surface will reflect 80% of the incident light and absorb the rest 20%. Alright? Increasing the diffuse roughness will cause more scattering of light on the surface, which will make it appear little darker as we increase the roughness. Roughness of higher value is suitable for materials such as concrete, plaster, or sand. Metalness is a straightforward property to make a material more reflective and metallic in nature. By just changing the base color, you can change the look of the metal and hence use it to create all the different types of metals, such as for steel, you can set this color to white, and for gold, you can set this color to yellow, while for copper, you can set this color to somewhat orange. Alright? Below that, we have a section for specular property, which is responsible for creating highlights and reflections on a surface. By changing the weight value, you can change the strength or brightness of this highlight created by a light. You can also change the color of the highlight by clicking on this box and selecting an appropriate color. This should be used only in case of certain metals and not for all types of surfaces, because non-metallic surfaces do not have colored highlights. So make sure you spend some time in observing the real-life materials, how they appear in presence of light, before you start working with these virtual materials. The more you study, the better and accurate you create. Alright? The roughness attribute will let you increase or decrease the roughness of the surface. And hence, if we decrease this, the surface will appear more polished and shiny, resulting in prominent highlights and clear reflections. A value of 0 will produce sharp reflections like that of a mirror, while if we increase this value, the surface will appear more matte or dull or rough, resulting in highlights that are more spread on the surface and produce blurry or diffuse reflections. If you want to create a surface like a mirror, you can set this roughness value to 0, keep this weight to 1, and also increase the weight value to 1 for the base, and set the metalness to 1 as well. This will give you a perfectly sharp and mirror-like reflection exactly as you want. Alright? Now below all of this, we have a section for transmission that is responsible for transmission of light through a surface, which determines how transparent a surface will be. If you set the weight for the transmission to 1, the surface will become totally transparent. And also, this will automatically disable the attributes for the base, so that no light is absorbed by the surface. Almost everything is just transmitted. Alright? One important thing to remember here is this, that if you set this weight value to 1, then the object may not cast shadows at all, whereas glass objects usually cast shadows no matter how light the shadow is. So, in that case, you can set this value closest to 1, but not exactly 1. Alright? The color attribute is used to set the color of light that is allowed to pass through the surface, and hence it affects the color of the surface, such as if it is set to white, that will allow all the colors of light to pass through the surface, resulting in white or colorless appearance. Whereas if I set this to red, it will cause the surface to absorb all the colors of light and allow only red light to pass through, hence making the object appear red in color. This is all real-life physics, which makes these materials behave exactly as it should in real world. The longer light travels inside an object, the more it is affected by the transmission color. Therefore, red glass becomes a deeper red as light rays travel through thicker parts of the glass. Hence, it is recommended to use light or subtle color values here to make it look more appropriate. Alright? Now, all the attributes that I didn't explain here belong to the advanced category and will require a good understanding of physics. So, if I try to explain all the other attributes now, you will become so much confused that you might lose confidence in moving forward. And hence, I am leaving these attributes to be explained in an advanced course of shading and lighting in Maya. Alright? Well, if you are thinking you don't understand a lot of physics and yet want to create physically accurate materials, then Arnold Renderer provides quite a huge list of presets that you can find by clicking on this presets option, located beside the name of the standard surface shader. Here you can select any material from this list and apply it over an existing material by replacing it completely or partially as needed. Like, I can select from here brushed metal and replace the existing material completely by selecting replace. Look, now I have brushed metal with all the attributes already set to what makes this material look like a brushed metallic surface. Same way, I can select glass from this list and replace the existing one by 100%. And look, now I have glass with all the attributes set to that of a glass material. Alright? So, even if you don't know how to put in accurate values here to simulate a particular material, you can still create a better one by using this list of presets that come along with Arnold Renderer. Alright? Now, I am going to quickly create few materials and assign them to these models that I have created here. First, I am going to create a ceramic material, hence rename it to AI Ceramic. And then, leaving everything to default, I am going to change the specular roughness to 0. Then, I am going to create a metallic shader, such as steel. Hence, rename it to AI Steel. Then set its metalness to 1 and decrease the specular roughness to 0.15. This should make it little more reflective but prevent it from being totally reflective like that of a mirror. Then I am going to create a glass material. Hence rename it to AI Glass. Set its transmission weight to close to 1, something around 0.95, so that it can cast shadows and still be transparent. And set the specular roughness to 0 and leave everything else to default. Then I am going to create a shader that should appear as a black surface, which is somewhat rough and not that shiny like the others. So I am going to rename it to AI Black Matte and set the base color to black. Then set the diffuse roughness to 1 and set the specular roughness to 0.6 to make it appear less shiny. Now, this area here may become cluttered with nodes as you keep creating shaders. So you can clean it up by clicking on this icon here with stars on it. If you want to bring up the nodes for any shader that you have created, you can select that shader and click on this icon with double arrows. This will display the shader here with all the input and output connections to other nodes. Same way, this one displays all the input connections to the shader, while this one here displays all the output connections from the shader. Currently, there are hardly any nodes connected to the shaders, so you won't see much of anything now. Okay, so let me clear this area again. Alright, so I have created all the necessary materials here that I am going to need. Now, I am going to assign these materials to all of my models that I have created here within this scene. There are two ways to assign a material or shader to an object. The first is by selecting an object, then going to Hypershade window and right-clicking on the material and selecting Assign Material to Selection. Look, the material has been assigned to the selected object, and hence it looks different than before. Another way to assign a material is to keep the Hypershade window open right on top anywhere on the screen, and just drag and drop the material using the middle mouse button on top of the object to which you want to assign the material. Alright, it is very easy, you just have to get used to it by practicing, and you can always do it in the way you are comfortable with. You don't have to stick to any particular way to do that. Not just that, you can also select only few faces from an object and assign a shader to those faces by using this right-click method. Now, I can close the Hypershade window and go to this renderer menu and click on Arnold to bring up this window. Let me click on this Start button to initiate the viewport rendering so that we can take a look at how these shaders are going to appear in our final output. So here it is. This is what the output is going to look like. Now, what I'm going to do is change the color of this glass material to somewhat red. Let me select the cup and within the attribute editor, just keep going to the right by clicking on this button unless you reach the shader node, which is our AI glass. Here, you can change this transmission color to light red and select the same color for the base and specular as well. I'm also going to remove the steel shader from this ring of faces by keeping the cup selected and going to Hypershade, right-clicking on the glass shader and selecting Assign Material to Selection. This will replace everything with this glass material. Then close this window and wait for the render to update. You can deselect the cup by going to Select menu and clicking on Deselect All. The shortcut is Alt+D. Alright? So this is how we can create different types of shaders or materials and assign them to objects in Maya. See you in the next video.